So welcome everybody. We have the wonderful Adey-Jones here, and she is a transformational coach as well as a speaker. Now she'll be speaking soon at a conference, and she's the host of Insightful Conversations, which is a wonderful live streaming show that you can access through YouTube or on Dell's website, and she interviews all sorts of wonderful people. So check her out.
Oh, and they're fabulous interviews.
They are. They're wonderful interviews. And today we're really excited because we are going to be talking about narcissism and codependency and gaslighting. And it's really interesting because the reason we sort of came up with this idea for this series was we had listened, Linda and I had heard the Chicks do their song Gaslighter, and it kind of, we were like, you know what? We should do a series on gaslighting and relationships and love. So we're really
That's right.
excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some light conversation today.
That's right. So Del, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. So we'll just start lightly with what can you talk to us? A lot of people confuse what is codependency, what does gaslighting mean, and what's the sort of intersection between all of that and narcissism? So can you just give a brief explanation for the viewers of what this is and maybe how you've seen this in your own life or had experience with this in your own life?
Yeah, well, I'm the poster child for codependency, or was, I should say. And yeah, boy, it's a lot to get into short period of time. But bottom line is, I'll just go through a description. So codependency, usually it's people that I would say suffer from low self-esteem. They tend to want outside validation. They tend to doubt their own capabilities. So they tend to get attracted to narcissists, and I'll go to that in a minute. Actually, I need to rephrase something before I start. We know we're not labeling anybody, because I know in the 3 principles we're just using shorthand for a set of behaviors. So just using my disclaimer here. So again, codependents tend to be people pleasers. They put other people's needs ahead of their own. They settle for crumbs in relationships and in life and in work situations too. They tend to feel sort of victimized by the person or the circumstances they're in. And they often feel responsible for other people's feelings. So they're always, trying to twist themselves into a pretzel to make other people happy. And especially if you're with a narcissist. Big one too, very weak boundaries. Like you'll say, that's it. If you cross that boundary, I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. And then, but they don't have the courage to leave because they feel dependent on others. So then they'll just keep moving that boundary around a bit. So that's pretty much what I would say is codependent behavior.
And boy, I want to say there, Del, I feel like you just described me, 30 years ago. It's kind of an odd feeling when somebody lists off that, that list, and you just realize, oh God, that was me,
So. You're lucky it ended 30 years ago. Mine was around a lot longer than that. But it is, and it's very common for women, because culturally we're encouraged to be the caretakers, the givers, the nurturers, the ones that are understanding. So it's very difficult to find that fine line. And again, not even just as women, but everybody is encouraged to be self-sacrificing and give to others, and you're selfish and bad if you take care of yourself. So it's having a healthy balance of we always say that sort of codependents are on one end, they have very sort of low levels of entitlement, and then on the other end, that's why they make such perfect matches, you've got the narcissist who has an elevated sense of entitlement and sense of self. So maybe I'll describe what the narcissist is before I go into the gaslighting. But there's different types of narcissists as well. Some of them show up. The ones we classically know are the ones that are sort of, charismatic and charming and they're full of confidence and they look powerful. But then there's some others that are really sneaky. Those are the covert ones, where it's still all about me, but there's more of a sort of a victim, sort of woe is me, all about me, rather than the get out of the way, it's all about me.
Yeah.
So you have to be on the lookout for those as well. They pretty much, the number one thing is the lack of empathy. They really can't put themselves in other people's shoes. It is purely all about them. Again, an inflated sense of self. I'm superior to others. I'm more intelligent. I'm brighter. And sure, if you've been paying attention to some of the stuff that's going on in the news right now, you might find somebody fits that bill.
I wonder who that could be.
Yeah,
ringing a bell.
The thing is, a lot of, and again, it used to be that they thought that just men were narcissists, but as we live in a narcissistic culture, so more and more women are becoming narcissists, and definitely with sort of celebrity culture and adoration for material things and next shiny ball that's out there. But definitely you'll see a lot of CEOs, politicians, and executives who are narcissistic because they don't mind climbing over other people to get to where they want. So that's just unfortunately how that can be sometimes. Highly sensitive to criticism, don't take responsibility for anything they've done. They project and blame on others. The best way to find out if a narcissist is guilty is to listen to what they're accusing you of, because it's usually what they're up to.
Projection.
Yes, projection. It's wonderful. It's like they might as well just sort of write a confession sheet out. It's so
yeah.
Complete mirror.
Yeah. Completely. I think very controlling and manipulative, and that actually will go into the gaslighting. Gaslighting is, there's so many things that happen within that narcissistic relationship, from the initial love bombing to the, feeling like you're with a Jekyll and Hyde. 1 minute they're Mr. Lovely and they're adoring you and you're on a pedestal. The next minute you're on the ground and you've been yanked off your pedestal and they're sort of attacking you. And that sort of backward and forward with that dynamic can be very painful. It actually can keep you stuck in that relationship. There's actually a chemical component to that. There's a cocktail that is produced within us that actually it's almost like having a drink, going in the bar or shooting heroin. And that's why there's the addictive component to it. People actually get addicted to the chemical responses they're feeling in that type of relationship. So it's not just psychological, it's actually physiological as well. And then there's the walking on eggshells, which we all know about, always like having to be careful, choose your words carefully. But I would say, for me, gaslighting is one of the most damaging, because gaslighting is when you lose all sense of yourself. It's like you're something is telling you this is wrong, or you even see something, it's blatant. Say if you've caught a partner cheating, you found the love letter, you found the lipstick on the collar, you've done all of that, and they have an ability to twist and turn and make it out that you're crazy, you're oversensitive, you're just imagining it. And, it's that, to me, is, as I say, when you start doubting your own sanity, why would you leave? You think you feel even more incapable of taking care of yourself. So that's to me, the gaslighting is, again, as I said, it's really playing with your mind, really undermining your sense of self and your that wisdom that's guiding you. You really lose touch with that. So it's very, very painful.
Yeah. So this really begs the next question. How do you know so much about this?
Okay, it's great, because most people say, well, how do you become codependent, and how do you find yourself in those relationships? And it usually does go back to childhood. I really don't, it's usually children that have grown up in trauma or abuse or abandonment, neglect. everything. I tick the boxes for all of those.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Linda. Yes, so I can see why you would have. So yeah, so you often feel, number one, your needs and wants aren't important, so you're always coming second. You get trained at a very early age to accept that. You have clearly getting crumbs in that parental relationship. You're only getting, minimum amounts of love, affection, security. So those are the reasons, why I developed it. And I ended up feeling that because I didn't have a father growing up, and there was a lot of chaos in my family home. And that's the other thing that codependents can often suffer from. Not everyone, but I certainly did, which is love addiction, where you are, I used to fantasize as a small child that, my life would be so much better if I had a father, or one that acknowledged me anyway. He lived down the road, but he wasn't involved. And you start to fantasize, and again, culture, fairy tales, my God, they teach us, it's like Cinderella, the prince will come, or
Jane Eyre.
Jane Eyre. Oh, I love Jane Eyre.
Me too.
Oh my God, I know. It's like, oh my God, please. And then Beauty and the Beast, for God's sake. It's like, my love will change them. My love will convert them into the beast, into the prince. I mean, my God, who decided to mess with children's brains when they came up with those stories? So, so I just grew up with that rescue fantasy. I grew up never trusting myself, believing that, and the other thing is, when you've been abused, like that voice inside you is saying, something happened. And then when the adults around you saying, no, it didn't, that didn't happen to you, you lose trust in yourself. You lose connection to that voice, because there's something inside you going, yes, it is. But as children, we would actually rather make ourselves crazy than the adults, because that way, because we don't want to think the adults in our life are crazy and incapable of taking care of us. We need them. So it's much easier to make ourselves wrong and bad. Plus, I think there's this weird little thing that if we make ourselves wrong and bad, then if we try hard enough, we can change ourselves, and then we'll make the situation okay. Mm-hmm. So it's twofold. That's pretty much how I became codependent.
And so because you had that codependency, Del, you went on later in your life as you grew up, did you attract a narcissist into your life?
Not just one, quite a few.
Okay.
I was an expert at spotting them. Like Michael Neal had a great, I don't know if he originated it, but I was talking to him about this, and he was saying, oh yeah, it's like, you have a bite and somebody else's teeth fit that bite. And it's so true.
Yeah.
My wound, it's like your teeth meet my wound. So I was just we have that innocent little thing we do as children. We sort of want to rewrite history. We want to do it again and have a happy ending this time. So I think I was naturally very attracted to narcissists. And also, when you feel so it's bad about yourself, you have all that litany of not good enoughs inside you. When you meet somebody sort of strong and powerful, charismatic, it's like, oh, you complete me.
Yeah, it's very attractive, isn't it? It's very like it spins your head.
Yeah, totally. It was like, you make up for everything that's missing in me. Like, I know I'm nurturing and loving and everything like that, but I'm not good at being big and strong and powerful out in the world. So you take care of that one, I'll take care of this, and we'll be a perfect union. And it doesn't work out that way. So yes, I had quite a lot of experience. But as I said, I've been very happy in my last relationship for the last 10 years. And it's a wonderful relationship. So I was able to crack that mold and do something differently through the principles.
So, yeah, absolutely. So for women who, okay, I'm just curious, is it possible to have a relationship with a narcissist, or when you're in a codependent relationship, or when somebody's gaslighting? Like, is it possible to have a relationship that is fulfilling, or is that just like When you see those red flags, run.
I would say if you see the red flags, go and choose a better partner for you.
Right.
But if you're in that relationship, and I teach a 6-week course on this, and my 5th week is should you stay or should you go? And there's no judgment. I mean, really, there are some people that truly feel they cannot leave. They stay because of financial reasons or children or whatever it is. They're choosing to stay. And I really want to honor that nobody should ever be shamed for the choice they make, whether they stay or leave. So I always say for the people that are choosing to stay, there's a few things you have to sort of get in mind. One of them is really be in acceptance of this is the way it is. So many people have an expectation. If I try harder, I do this, twist myself in another way, I can make it better. Acceptance, that's why I have my little sign behind me, surrender. I always say most of our suffering really comes from the resistance to what is. And that suffering within a relationship often comes from wishing it was something different, wishing the partner was somebody different. And, in classic psychotherapy, they always say that, narcissists don't change, or if they do, it's like teeny-weeny percent. Obviously in the 3 principles, we know that anybody that has an insight can change. We know that. But often narcissists are not really inclined to be self-reflective. In their worldview, they're often winning. And that's a big thing. They like to win. So they think, and often if they do go into therapy, it's usually their codependent partner that's dragging them in there saying, help me. So I often say, so it's acceptance is first. Don't try and change somebody. Yeah. Get your emotional needs met somewhere else, quite honestly. I mean, there will be good times. There's always good times. Nobody's all good or bad. You're going to have good times, but don't get lured into sort of, that you will always come second. That's just a fact. And if you're okay coming second, some people are fine with that. They get their emotional needs met with their friends, their family, their whatever, somewhere else. Often the other one is my therapist used to tell me, put on a Teflon suit. And I really say it's like, it's like a jumpsuit. You get your legs in your arms and you zip it up, you pull the hood, just draw the string up tight and put a pair of goggles on and just let whatever is said just slide off you. I mean, the worst thing you can do is start to explain or defend yourself, hoping to achieve a different result. It's better to just let it wash off you. They'll calm down again. But if you take things personally, and again, this is, separate realities of the godsend for me, because I spent years, even after I was out of those relationships, trying to make sense of how they could have done what they did. And now it's just like, I don't really care. They were living in their own separate reality. I'm not going to waste my time or my life trying to figure out what they were thinking or acting on that thought. Clearly, they had thinking that made them behave in a certain way. So that's their separate reality. It's none of my business. So I think
you may have touched on this already, Del, but in fact you have a little bit. Let's go a little bit deeper. Obviously, some of the behaviour that you've just described of these men and women, yeah, is obviously, what's the word? It's not normal, and it's not something that someone would really desire. Why do you think so many women tend to normalize it? What's going on there that they don't? I mean, I'm just assuming that they do normalize it because I think I used to do that. Used to give the benefit of the doubt. And can you say a little bit about?
Yeah, I think it's, well, I was interviewing a woman once on my show who was in a cult, and she was saying nobody comes out and says, hey, we're a cult, we're going to turn you against your family. We're going to take all your money. We're going to rob you of all your self-esteem, and we're going to control and everything you. And as she was telling me this, I thought, God, she's describing a narcissistic relationship. You don't see that at first. That charm, that love bombing. I mean, for me, okay, and I don't name any particular relationship, so this is an amalgamation of a few. But I felt worshipped. I felt absolutely worshipped. I was on a pedestal.
Really?
Oh my God, I was so, this Prince Charming had chosen me, and I was such a sucker for it because I had such low self-esteem. Now, if somebody did that, I'd be running a mile going, oh my God, they are pouring it on. But for me, it really drew me in. Now, what happens very quickly after that is the sort of, well, first of all, they put this frame on you, like, oh my God, I've been looking for you all my life. I'm just a woman just like you. You tick all my boxes, you this, and you're feeling all great. And then all of a sudden, they start to notice you're not as perfect as they thought you were. And so they start trying to tell you that you better sort of, don't do that, stop that, look this way, dress that way, do this, do that. And you're sort of like this a bit. And then, but you've got this thing of what it was first like, that incredible love that you felt. Well, for me, it was like I'd never been loved like that before. So slowly but surely and then it gets so bad with the criticisms and the pulling you down and everything, you think, oh, I'm out of here. And then they have a sense of that, and you're back on the pedestal, and there's the worshipping and the wooing and all that going again. And as I said, that intermittent reinforcement keeps you there. So as soon as the degrading goes on again, you feel like you can't bear it, you're going to leave, and then you pull back. So that push and pull that goes on, as I said, creates a chemical dependency as well as a psychological one. And then there's all the other things of, they've usually got a good reason or an excuse, and they had an abusive childhood, or they have an addiction, and you're there as, again, Beauty and the Beast. You're going to love the beast into becoming a prince. And like I said too, this is a big one for me. Oh my God. With one of my very long relationships, I felt, and I don't gamble, but I felt like I was at one of those slot machines where you put in the quarters, and it's like you put in so much, you don't want to leave just in case the next woman that comes along sits down, pulls the thing, and gets all the rewards of your hard work.
So we are cut from the same cloth, Del. I tell you, that is a perfect metaphor to describe how I used to feel. Yeah, that's great.
It really is.
I mean, it's not great, but yeah.
What is so great is we can laugh at it, and we can own it, and we can talk.
Yeah.
And what's even greater than anything is there's a way out. I mean, there really is. You don't have to. I used to coach people before the principals in this area.
Oh.
You had to have them feel seen and heard and understood and empathize and everything. But I couldn't really I couldn't help them really find their way out. You had to make them feel better, but not really change the behavior.
Yeah.
They would have an education about what it looked like, and they could see more clearly, but they couldn't get out. And it was only when I came across the principles that I was like, oh my God, there is a way out. So yeah.
So tell us about that distinction, because that's, I think a lot of people would be like, what do you mean? Like, so what did you see with our understanding that you hadn't seen before that allowed you to just kind of detach yourself from this vicious cycle?
Yeah. I'd always believed I was broken, and I've been on a spiritual path since I was 21 when I first got here. That's what's so fabulous about California in the 80s. It was like,
yeah,
everything. And I even did a master's in spiritual psychology, and I'd heard we're all equal, and I'm like, yeah, you are, but not me. You don't know my story. My story proved I should never have been born. My story, I am so broken, damaged, not good enough, and all these things that I thought I was. And when I came across the principles, like, it was so simple. It was something that just took it from here and just like dropped it in. And I actually went, I remember thinking, oh my God, I really am equal. Yes, my little tiny quirky human expression of my spiritual essence is different to other people, shorter, fatter, whatever it is. It's not. It's just a teeny weeny expression of who I am. So I know that at my essence, we are all connected. We all come into the world in the world of form with equal amounts. Nobody got a bit more than anybody else. So that was really that was huge for me, first of all. So I didn't look for people to complete me. That I actually got to see that I came with resilience and innate well-being and wisdom too, and mine was just as good as yours. So the need to attach to people like that was diminished. The other one was a huge one for me, understanding the nature of thought, understanding that, these habitual thoughts I had of not being good enough, blah, 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 ones I just gave before, I won't bore you again with them. But when I realized that those were just habitual thoughts, they weren't mine, they weren't telling me about me, they didn't know me, they were just, they set up camp for so long that I thought they were me and I thought they were telling me about me. So that was wonderful to sort of play with that and basically just be like, well, I was making up shit anyway, so what other shit can I make up? Good shit. So it was like, it was just playful. That was a huge one for me. And again, just, when you've been abused, you sometimes feel, well, I certainly felt sort of tainted and whatever. But when you know that who you are at your essence, that can never be touched or broken or hurt or damaged. And I actually had what's the word? Forgetting the word. Like a flashback. And in that flashback, I actually looked over here. And in that looking over here, I saw myself absolutely being held in, my mum's an atheist, so I didn't grow up with the word God, but I was being held by this incredible light that was holding me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, nothing happened to me over here. And I'm going to keep looking that direction. So that was huge. Again, knowing that. As I said, separate realities, not taking anything personally. So if I was, say if somebody abused or cheated on me or anything like that, it used to be like, well, what did I do to ask for that? And now it's like, no, they had thinking that made them feel that they're entitled to behave in that way. And that's as simple as that. I don't have to make it about me and something wrong with me that they behave like this. Again, also, often when we're codependent, we like a fixer-upper. So sometimes we can be attracted to people. I certainly was when I was younger. It was like, if anybody healthy came towards me, I was like, oh, out of the way, you're never going to get me. I need the unhealthy one, the one that's been through trauma too, because you'll get me, you'll understand me. And often, some codependent people can be locked in relationships with addicts that they feel responsible for, that if they left, that person would die without them. And I think when we see that same resilience and innate well-being that's within us is within everybody, we don't have to rescue other people. And sometimes actually when we step back, we're giving them the best gift in life because they actually get to see, oh God, I didn't need that person. I've got it inside me. So it's I think when I saw that too, because my codependency was showing up in all areas of my life. It just wasn't just with my partners. It was with rescuing family members or my children or whatever it was. And it was like, oh no, they've got everything they need inside them. And you're doing them a disservice by, rushing in. And especially as coaches, I think it's so wonderful that we know this, that we don't, have them feel dependent on us. So,
it's interesting you say that, Del, because the last relationship that I got out of, which was about 20 years ago, I was with a guy who was a gaslighter. And I went through that whole guilt of, if I leave him, he's going to be devastated. He's not going to have the wherewithal to get on with his life. And interestingly enough, when I did make the decision to leave, he was married within 6 months to someone else, perfectly happy. I mean, I don't know how it, actually, I think it ended, I heard recently. But anyway, he managed to get on his feet again. And I remember hearing that. I was thinking, why was I worrying so much? You know, it just shows that, and I was happy for him, you know. But it really speaks to what you're saying there. It's like we take on this burden. At least I did, because I grew up being the caretaker of my parents, you know. And so I was always trying to rescue people. And yeah, interesting, isn't it? How even the very worst of us, you know, as I do the commas in the air, we do find a way. Bounce back and get on with life, right? We find that way. We find that resilience to do that.
But it's interesting. Actually, you pointed to something else that I wanted to mention. Often, if you end a relationship with somebody that has narcissistic behavior, you often find that they very quickly find somebody else, and you're left thinking, you know, what did I mean to them? And really, they call it narcissistic feed. They need constantly sort of fresh source, new feed. So it is almost like, well, you're done. Okay, move on. Next one, quickly, come on. So
actually, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know if he actually did find his resilience or he just found another person to care.
I actually think that's more what it was. Yeah, that he just, that makes so much sense hearing that. Yeah.
But even in that, there's wisdom for him.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's still there.
Oh, I got to feed this. So boom, do what I do.
Exactly.
Del, I'm so curious about when we talked about gaslighting before, you said that was a really hard one because you start to doubt yourself. You start to lessen listening to your own voice and not trusting it. So when you sort of had some of these insights that freed you from this connection to narcissists and codependency and gaslighters, how did you reestablish that connection? How did that come about?
You know, it took a while. I'm not going to lie. It really did. For a number of reasons. I feel like I had been disconnected from that wisdom from such an early age. You know, being blatantly, you know, but the example of my father, you know, he lived a couple of miles down the road, and he would visit my mum once a week at night, but after we'd gone to bed, and we lived in little trailers, so we didn't see him. Mum had a separate caravan, and because we used our home for mentally ill people. So I would hear about his visit the next morning, and I'd be like, I want to see him, you know, why can't he come earlier? And my mum would say, oh, he loves you, he really loves you, he just can't be with us. But then when I reached 5 years old and I started going to the village school, and I'd actually pass him on the street and he would look the other way or walk away, I kept hearing my mother's voice, he loves you. But my insides were telling me, that doesn't feel like love. I feel like I'm nothing. So, and that was just one example. There were many, many, many other examples of being told, no, whatever you think is wrong, violations, everything. So I ended up almost, certainly not trusting that inner voice, but almost like rejecting it. It's like, you're steering me wrong. You're getting me into trouble. You're making, you know, we call it cognizant dissonance. You know, you can't hold two opposing views at once. So I went into complete denial. I got so closed off in that. So yeah, I mean, I remember one time, somebody calling my house and saying, can I speak to so-and-so? And I was like, who is this? And they said, I'm the girlfriend. And I practically fainted. And but then totally believed the lies that I was told, because what choice did I have? You know, in my mind, it was like, but this sounds like it's this, but I've been taught not to trust that. And I was being told something else. And it took me a long, long time my therapist used to say, judge behavior is not words, because you could really tell me anything and I'd buy it. I'd just buy anything. It's like, because my feelings were not to be trusted. So it's like, oh, you're telling me this? Okay, that's the truth. And so it took me a long time afterwards to really, really reconnect with that wisdom, that intuition I could trust. And now it's unshakable. I mean, absolutely unshakable. But it did take some time for me to reestablish that. And it never went anywhere. I just completely covered it up because I had been told not to trust it. So.
Yeah, also, the reason why childhood trauma is so traumatic is because it's your parents, and a child wants to idolize their parents, you know, and so it's painful to think opposing thoughts about your parents, and so you give them that benefit of the doubt. Because I had the same dynamics going on. I would have these like little whispers of like you Del, like something's off here, you know? like that was the truth, right? That was my wisdom speaking to me. Something's gone awry here, something's not quite right. And then I'd snap myself out of it because it was my parents. How could you think things like that about your parents, you know? So that's why it's tender. It's different when you're traumatized when you're a child. At least I think so anyway, than when you're a young adult, because it's related to your parents.
Yeah, and it is true, because as children we really are dependent. I mean, we fear abandonment, because it's life threatening to us. I mean, people can say, oh, I have an issue with abandonment as an adult, but that's different. You might not like being left, but a child's life depends on it. So you're right, and I'm fascinated by people's stories, and when people come to me, that's the big thing in the 3 principles. I often hear people, they'll come to me and they'll say, but if I'm just feeling my thinking, then shouldn't I be able to tolerate this? And I say, if you came to me with a broken arm and a black eye, I would not be telling you to go away because it's your thinking. For me, I think we live in the world of form. And I think we've had things in life that have impacted us. They haven't damaged us, they've impacted us. And we have made a story around that, with some thinking, and we've stored it somewhere in us. And then we've grown up, never questioning it. I mean, my story of not being good enough because my father would have loved me if I'd been thinner, prettier, skinnier, funnier, whatever enough. I mean, you'd think by the time I got to 20, I'd go, well, that's a load of rubbish. I mean, clearly he just couldn't love me. But I didn't. I carried that belief, certainly not maybe consciously, but unconsciously. It carried through time with me. So I think it's great to go back. It's great to hear stories and history. Great to find out where that thinking first took root. And that's how we connect as well, as through stories. So I'm not one of those 3P people that says, I don't want to hear your story, don't want to hear your past. It's all about now, just what you're thinking. For me, and that's fine if that works for some people. It doesn't for me. And and I love the relationships I have with my clients, because I know they feel seen and heard, but they also know that they don't have to stay there. So that's
amen to that.
Yeah, and I think the story, just understanding, allowing for the story and the space for the story, also it's that thing that creates that trust and that rapport and that connection with the client, so that they do see seen and heard. They do feel that with you, so you establish that trust right there. And then you as a coach can also see, oh, let's see, what is the habitual thinking that's going on? What is this repetitive thing? And the origin of it at that point.
Yeah. And another point you just brought up, which is really important, children that grow up in traumatic abusive environments that tend to show up as codependents, they weren't seen, they weren't acknowledged, they weren't validated. So more than ever, that needs to happen. the last thing you need is more sort of dismissal of like, well, you're just stuck in your story and it doesn't matter, So, I think.
And Lana will tell you this. This comes up for me even now, and all these years, and it manifests throughout, especially with my work. On my website, it's there. Be seen, be heard, and it's been the thing that I have dealt with all my life, and so. Yeah, it's just amazing how it shows up. And so now it kind of comes through every now and again. I can feel it. Sometimes if I'm in a low state of mind and I'm feeling that, I wish I could be more seen and heard.
Mm.
That wound, it can still feel a little bit woundy, and, I'll have a moment with it. It doesn't hang around like it used to at all. But it's like old, you can tell it's old stuff, coming through, but it doesn't have the lasting power that it used to have.
Yeah. No, and as you're sharing that, it's so funny because I had a deep need to be seen and heard, but I was also so full of shame. I was always hiding.
Yeah.
So I was like this thing going on in me.
Yeah.
And that's the other beautiful thing about the principles. A few years ago, you would never have found me like in front of the camera, talking, anything, because to me, it was dangerous to be seen and heard, as painful as it was to be ignored. There was a danger to it. I brought into that hiding and or defensiveness. So it's a
playing small,
yeah, exactly.
That's the paradox of it, isn't it? It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think, we're bringing out sort of this conversation about original wounds, kind of in our family of origin. And I think it's so important to understand all of these aspects that you're talking about, the separate realities, that, people just do what they think makes sense to them and what their habits are. And I think, for us, whatever wound we're dealing with or whatever constraint we're dealing with, it's so important to realize that our parents were human doing the best they could. And our society, through books, through everything else, we have them on such pedestals that, this is the father figure, this is the mother figure, this is what it should look like. Yeah. And if it doesn't look like that, a kid's mind will go, well, then it was me. Like it was something to do with me.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh no, George and Edna were just, they just had their own stuff and they were doing the best they could, but they couldn't show up in that way for you as a child.
Yeah.
I think it's so important for that.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I can certainly look back at my, parenting and the breakup of a relationship with their father that was excruciatingly painful for me, that I wasn't as present as I could be. I was in so much pain. I was in survival mode. And I look back but the beauty is, see, with my mother, I know she was doing the best she could. She truly thought saying, oh no, your father loves you, even if it was completely contrary to how I felt, I think she was trying to do a good thing. She was trying to make me feel it just ended up scrambling my brain and thinking that love looked like this and I should keep falling in love with men that don't want to be with me and then I'll be in love. So I see the innocence in that and other choices she made, having our home full of mentally handicapped people and mentally mental illness and disabilities and not having a separate dwelling for us. It was crazy. But in her mind, it was like, oh, they're our extended family, they're our aunts and uncles, and I was like, it's like, doesn't feel that way to me. So, but it's that ability to look back and just go, God, nobody woke up in the morning and said, how can I screw up my kids? It's like they were doing the best they could with their thinking at the time.
And I look back and say, how did they ever survive? Knowing what they had to deal with, right? I just don't understand how they ever survived it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's having compassion. I mean, really, it is. It's that again. As I said, the separate realities. I don't feel any anger to anybody that I felt abused me at all.
No.
And I don't. And that's the other thing is so great is like people say, "Well, have you forgiven?" And I'm like, there's almost that word "forgiven" doesn't even apply because it's like when you understand separate realities.
Understand.
Exactly. I understand
Mm.
that they had thinking that made them do certain things. So there is no need for me to be sort of, I forgive you. It's like I can look at myself and, as I said, and go, wow, if I could do a redo on quite a few things, I would, knowing what I know now. But we don't always have that privilege. So
Well, we're coming up to the end here. I would still like to ask a question about, what advice would you give women today who are in the dating and, what would you say to them about how to navigate themselves confidently through this whole relationship world when they meet men?
well, I would really, I mean, somebody once told me, it was a therapist that told me I wasn't ready to get married. I should have listened. I thought, as I said, part of my sort of pattern was you complete me. I think when you are really complete within yourself, when you are, and this is what the principles does so beautifully, we're so incredibly um, humble about our human experience. We don't judge it as wrong or bad. It's just like, oh yeah, oops, that's what it is to be human. And the more that you can just absolutely, like, I used to do a lot of shadow work, which was reintegrating the disowned aspects of the self. And when you can just really totally embrace yourself, the entirety of who you are, it's like, oh, okay, I was a bitch today, or okay, I was greedy, or whatever. We're human. We're going to have those human things in us. The more that we just embrace that and are okay with who we are, the less we're inclined to think that somebody else has something that we don't have. Mm-hmm. When we see our own strengths, and when we come from that place, we, number one, attract healthier people because water finds its own level. And number two, you then can come from a place of want and desire as opposed to need. Need gets you in trouble. When you think you need somebody, you're going to start moving that line. You're going to start believing the gaslighting. You're going to move those boundaries. You're going to make excuses for them. You're going to, whatever you're going to do because you feel you need them and you can't live without them. But if you're coming from a place of strength and confidence, again, I used to keep thinking, one more qualification, one more thing, and I'll become confident. And that's the beauty of the principles is we know it's not on the outside, it's inside. And once you start tapping into that resource that's always been there, you show up in that way. And so, you're looking around to be in a relationship with somebody that you desire to be in a relationship with, or you want to be in a relationship. But if need sneaks in, I'd say pull back and check in again, because really there is no need. And the other thing, I just wanted to mention that also knowing that the love that you feel and the security that you feel is coming from within, not from the other person. So when you really know that too, that's such a, again, you're not going to get into that needy place. I'm not talking about lovely giving to each other and beautiful give and take relationships. I'm just talking about that need where you're going to accept crumbs and you're going to accept abuse. So
I have to say that's a huge distinction, understanding that the love is not coming from out there, that you're not feeling their love. The love is already in you and it's just being opened up and you have access to it. You are feeling yourself, your own essence.
Yeah.
And it makes such a huge difference with clients when they start to see this.
Yeah.
Okay, so just what is the most effective way that you have found to point this out to your clients when they're like, no, I feel their love, and when they don't love me, then I don't feel it anymore. I don't have it.
I mean, well, I don't know if I address it head on. I think it's something that you end up, the more that you're in acceptance for who you are, warts and all, the more that you can embrace the totality, I think the more that you actually feel that love, and so that it's experiential. I mean, the classic, we can say, well, have you ever felt love for the other person when they're 1,000 miles away? You know, is the love coming from within you? But then, you know, I think you get into semantics there about, yeah, well, it's because we already have love. It's already because I've had the love for them. So I don't, it's more about, it keeps coming down to it for me, is that completely and utterly self-acceptance and surrendering into what is, and you feel that love. My children, sometimes, my youngest said to me, he goes, why are you always so loving? And I was like, because I love being in my loving. It's like you swim in it and it feels so good that you end up stop looking for it out there. You're swimming in it. And that was the other thing. I used to think that love was something I had to get. It was almost like I had a vision the other day about me standing in a lake with an empty cup going, give me some water, give me some love. And I was actually swimming in a lake of beautiful, fresh water, which was like,
oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's love is for me to give, not to get. So.
Yeah. What a, you know, we've all been trained, raised in this culture, in this life to really buy into that, you know, that, and it's not coming from out there. It's all within you. It's like, it's quite a radical thing to suggest, and to get used to, you know?
Yeah. But the more that you feel it, it's indisputable.
Yeah.
And life just turns upside down when you feel it. When you become it, your true nature, and you're connected to that, it's just, life looks completely different.
Yeah.
And also just to try out in your own life, just look for those, look for evidence of, you know, your partner could be doing exactly the same loving things one day, but you're not feeling it.
Yeah.
Right? So like Lana and I are always saying to our when we do our course, our confidence course, go in your own life and look for the evidence to the contrary. You know, just find it yourself, because that's when you're going to really get the insight. Oh, yeah, that must be going on, because just see what happened, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And my boyfriend, partner, I called him my boyfriend after 10.5 years, but he's the steadiest, most loving person in the world. There's nothing. So it proves to me, like, there's some days where I'm like, oh, he's so loving. And then there's other days where I'm like, really pissed off. He's driving me nuts.
Yeah.
And he has not changed in the least. Whereas I'm like up and down. So
yeah.
So it's great, because every time I find myself going into that sort of niggly whatever, I'm like, oh boy, you know it's not him. You know it's you.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And that
Lana, you have a last. Lana always has the last word.
Oh, okay. If you had just one thing that you wanted to share with women out there, what would be the one thing around?
Only one.
Only one. One thing around love and relationships.
Oh, putting me on the spot here.
I know.
One thing to share with women. I think we'll just go back to what we just said, that the love is inside you. And it's something to share, not to feel that you have to grasp at or get on the outside. That it really is the most beautiful feeling to just languish in, is that love.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Del.
This was such a great conversation. I loved it.